Ninjago has a lot of different fight scenes, I think that is no secret whatsoever, but they all vary in terms of their scale. You may have a relatively small fight just to pad out an episode, or you may have the big season finale battle, but the thing is that only a few of them have a very specific title, which is the emotional fight scenes. And you could argue that they're some of the best fight scenes we've ever had within the course of the show, and there are many examples of them. But the thing is that there is one in particular that is not only a fantastic fight, but is by far the most emotionally significant fight for two of very specific Ninjago characters. And in similar vein to before where I analysed Zane vs Mr. E, we are going to be taking a look back at another Season 8 fight, which is of course Lloyd vs Garmadon. This fight scene by far is one of the most emotionally dense fights we've ever seen, and the animation alone tells a whole nother story that you never would really notice unless you take a finer look. So that is going to be what we're doing today, analysing what is potentially Ninjago's most emotional fight scene and really demonstrating why it's as good as it truly is. But we're not actually going to start the analysis at the fight scene itself. The entirety of the episode is alluding to how Lloyd truly feels. Of course, in the scene where the ninja realized that Garmadon actually did return, Lloyd is in a state of disbelief, and holds on to this moment of disbelief because it carries Lloyd through for the entirety of the episode. Lloyd initially denies the fact that it was even Garmadon, and despite the fact that in multiple different occasions he was told that it was in fact Garmadon, and not only that, it wasn't the Garmadon that he remembered, he still remains completely confident that it was truly a Garmadon that only he actually understood. He believed that he could return Garmadon back to his good state like he did previously. Lloyd essentially bides his time and keeps everyone at bay until it's time to strike best, and his first initial strike for the entirety of this fight scene is not actually against Garmadon. In my opinion, the fight starts as soon as he locks the ninja out. He keeps them out because he just simply doesn't want to shift his own mindset. He truly believes that he can confront Garmadon and do what is right, and there is a moment in the scene where he does lock the ninja that all but proves it to me. A very consistent theme in these very emotional fights is seeing the ninja in a mindset that we are not used to them seeing in. The thing is that when I talked about Zane vs Mr. E, for example, we saw a very angry version of Zane. However, in this initial moment of Lloyd, where he does lock the ninja out, he is oddly disconnected. He is very emotionally unavailable when it does come to the team, which is completely out of his character. But the thing is that it's all but proven in the moment where he says he has to do it, and he initially looks quite sad at what he's doing, but he has a moment where he almost shifts into a different mindset. He goes completely stoic, he goes completely emotionless, and he goes into a state where he doesn't even consider the ninja's existence. It's that mix of disbelief that is starting to seep into anger, and again this will be more important later, but it more than proves that Lloyd, before even going near Garmadon, was completely in a different headspace, and it really does speak volumes and shows what happens when you push Lloyd to a point of emotional instability where he truly cannot know what to do next. The next moment that really does demonstrate Lloyd's mindset before again even the fight is when he's driving towards Crypterium. The ninja are doing their best to stop him, but he physically will not hear them out. When they try to talk to him and try to get him to stop, his exact words are, "I'm not in the mood to talk, this ends now." And for one, the tone of which he's saying it is speaking volumes to how angry he truly is. But the thing is that the phrase, "this ends now," isn't actually on about Garmadon. Remember, he is completely confident that he can actually change Garmadon. He is saying this ends now to the conversation with the ninja. He quite literally cannot stand them in that moment because he is truly locked in on what his main objective is. His disbelief that Garmadon is truly real, and also the fact that he can bring him back. What's interesting to me though is that as soon as Lloyd arrives at Crypterium Prison, even though he is still in that mood of angry but also in disbelief, he actually changes his demeanor in a very weird way. As soon as Lloyd gets out of his vehicle, he goes up to the door and he stands right in view of a camera where he shouts, "Father, come out and face me." Now initially speaking, you may just be believing that Lloyd is just simply shouting at the door, believing Garmadon is simply right there. But I also don't think Lloyd would be that silly to reckon that Garmadon would just be that readily available. And the thing is that the shots where you see him within the camera frame is almost too perfect. It's almost like Lloyd wanted to be in the camera. And this actually leads me into my next point, which is I believe Lloyd is starting to understand the situation that he is truly in. I think Lloyd is slowly starting to realize what is actually waiting for him. But the thing is that he has stood perfectly within that camera frame. I believe this is actually him demonstrating a display of strength. I believe that he reckons that he knew that Harumi would be watching. So this is a way to provoke some form of confrontation. But he does enter Kryptarian regardless, and through the shots where all the cameras are showing Lloyd throughout the city of Ninjago, you can actually see him walking through a corridor, and you can see him checking every single angle and every single avenue that Garmadon could potentially be in. So we're not only in the state of an angry Lloyd and also a disbelief Lloyd, but we're also starting to enter the state of a paranoid Lloyd. Obviously, this state doesn't remain for too long because it's only around for as long as Lloyd doesn't know where Garmadon is, but you can actually see that Lloyd is very much shifting when it does come to his emotional well-being. Lloyd is beyond paranoid. He does not know where Garmadon may be, he just knows he's somewhere, and he is doing at every cost to make sure he is not going to be taken off guard. And it's really interesting because again, it shows that shifted dynamic. But we are finally at the point of the actual confrontation. Lloyd again angry and also demanding Garmadon to show himself. But as soon as Garmadon comes out of the shadow and says the remark, "You've changed," well, Lloyd looks at him and it becomes all too real. Lloyd actually remarks, "So do you." And the thing is that is actually just Lloyd basically thinking out loud. That is not Lloyd outright acknowledging that Garmadon is back to the four-arm state. Of course it is on a surface level, but the thing is that it is also Lloyd realizing that it truly is Garmadon. But that's the thing, it's a complete dynamic switch because the disbelief is now officially gone. And the thing is that it was completely intertwined with the anger. So all Lloyd has left is honestly just that feeling of the fact that his father has actually returned. It actually harps back to the very initial moment where Lloyd sees Garmadon on the screen at the beginning of the episode. It is the shock, it is the confusion, and it's the feeling of absolute dread that goes through him. And all he says to Garmadon is just simply, "I don't want to fight you." And he actually turns off of his elemental power. But the thing is that it ultimately did not matter to Garmadon, and Garmadon simply did not care. He is there to fight Lloyd, and he is going to do what he intended to do so. So of course he strikes Lloyd, and the thing is that it does push him back. And this goes into a very big aspect of this fight scene, which is the elemental power that courses around Lloyd. This is an elemental shield that Lloyd created to prevent any of Garmadon's attacks, and I do find it fairly interesting to note that he had it activated before Garmadon's first strike. It is clearly done in the moment just before he turns off of his elemental power, but the thing is that Lloyd did it because he clearly anticipated it going the wrong way. So it shows that Lloyd still to an extent had his battle tactics in the back of his head, but he was too emotionally unstable to truly actually counter the attack. But the thing is that he gets pushed back and he reactivates his elemental power, and he does the exact same hand motion, and when he jumps up to the second floor of Kryptarium, you can actually see the shield regenerate. It's like he only had it temporarily because he may have thought he didn't even need it, but he realized that is the moment where he truly did need it. But this extends into the other point. Lloyd is activating his elemental powers, and he is not actually using it to attack Garmadon. He is only using it for defensive purposes, but more on that later. But this leads to a very important moment throughout the course of this fight, and that is of course the moment where Garmadon first activates his power in front of Lloyd, and Lloyd's disbelief actually returns in this moment, and not for the reason of he doesn't believe his father exists. He's realizing that his father exists, and it is most definitely not what he thought was going to be the case, and this is actually reflected in Lloyd's eyes. Of course, he also remarks, "You have power," and he says it in a very "I don't know what to do" kind of tone, but the thing is that Lloyd's eyes is a very significant part of Ninjago, especially within the course of the Oni trilogy. You can see that Lloyd's eyes typically are a very bright green, but in this moment, Lloyd's eyes start to dim. They don't enter the fully black eyes that we see throughout Season 9, but the thing is that you can actually see that the eyes are starting to turn that shade of black. It's not like Lloyd has lost his powers yet, but he is actually losing them because Garmadon was growing stronger. But after a couple of failed attacks from Garmadon, Lloyd does say one thing to him, which is he didn't come to fight, which I do believe to an extent was true, but also maybe not, and he does say what we do know, which is the fact that he does want to save him. And Garmadon, of course, in a very angry tone says there is nothing left to save, because at this point, if my theories are to be believed, the old version of Garmadon was simply still asleep. But the thing is that Lloyd obviously doesn't realize that, and his reaction says everything. He is completely taken aback. He truly does not know what to do. The entirety of his plan is out of the window, and again, you can see him slowly fade in more and more. It is genius because you can see absolutely every strike that Lloyd is taking within this fight, both in the sense of Garmadon's punches, Garmadon's power, and the emotional hits that Garmadon is also issuing upon Lloyd. The thing is that every single time Garmadon makes some sort of remark about how he's not the Garmadon that Lloyd is hoping that he is, it is further ruining Lloyd's capacity to actually stay within this fight. And it of course bleeds into the entirety of the theme of the fight, which is as Garmadon gets stronger, Lloyd gets weaker, and the shift in the balance acts accordingly. But Garmadon, of course, goes back in for another strike, and in this instance, Lloyd again uses his powers, but again to recall in that shield. He keeps having to call it back in because it keeps getting used up from Garmadon's initial attacks. But Garmadon pushes Lloyd back, and Lloyd actually starts to walk away. He doesn't want to be in this fight by any capacity, and the thing is that it's the first moment Lloyd actually does use his elemental power in the offensive sense. He does throw one at Garmadon, but the thing is that it feels more like a get away from me kind of strike. It doesn't feel like the kind of blow that he would take if he actually wanted to knock Garmadon down. It felt defensive still in nature, even though it was actually offensive. But it goes into one of the most important parts of this fight. Garmadon goes on one of the most haunting moments of the fight, where he talks about how the only thing that was summoned back was actually the Destroyer. It wasn't the teacher, the father, the husband. None of those masks actually did come back. And the thing is that whilst he's saying all this to Lloyd, he is just bombarding him with his elemental power. And Lloyd, you can quite literally see cowering. Lloyd is just trying to edge himself away from Garmadon. He is trying to get away in any sense whatsoever. He is beyond terrified in this moment. Lloyd is completely tapped out of the fight at this very moment. He doesn't know what to actually do anymore. The disbelief and the emotional weight has completely overthrown him. He literally doesn't know anything else to do apart from run. And he tries. But ultimately Garmadon still catches him and still shoots him with his elemental power. And Lloyd has no other choice but to respond with an actual fight. But the thing is that this fight, again, is really weird in its nature and really demonstrates Lloyd. Lloyd goes in to return the fight, yes, but the thing is that there is a distinct lack of elemental power. And again, it goes back to the whole thing of Lloyd getting weaker. At this point in the fight, you can very clearly tell that Lloyd is becoming more and more tired, and it's becoming more difficult for him to actually access his elemental power. And of course, it's because he's losing it. He is losing the elemental abilities that he is actually relying on in more ways than one. The thing is, though, is that he can't use it. And as Lloyd is actually striking Garmadon, Garmadon is of course returning as such, and also getting more powerful again. But the thing is that you can see Lloyd slowing down. Lloyd is starting to become more and more unable to actually return. He's becoming more defensive again. He is simply just blocking the attacks at this point. Again, speaking to the fact that by now he is completely tapped out. He is simply in there just trying to survive. And again, perfectly it leads into the next moment between the two of them. Like I said, Lloyd slowed down and he's simply just trying to survive. He is barely holding back Garmadon in every single sense of the word. And the thing is that he's no longer at the point of trying to rescue Garmadon back into his good state. He is simply just trying to divert Garmadon's attention so he can slip away. He tries to turn Garmadon on Harumi by referring to him as a pawn. But the thing is that he is absolutely having none of it, and Garmadon continues to fight. And I think that was honestly Lloyd's last moments where he truly thought he could get out of that without any sort of injury. Little did he know. But after Garmadon threw him through a wall, Lloyd gets up and he is visibly in agony. He is hurting, he's holding himself together, and again his elemental shield is gone. But Garmadon again is rapidly approaching him. But he's trying his best simply again to get away. So he tries to muster his elemental power, and you can visibly see him struggling to even conjure the power. But Garmadon just simply blocks it anyways and just continues his walk towards Lloyd. And in one of the most brutal moments we've ever seen in the show, Garmadon is just wailing on Lloyd. He's pushing him against the wall, he's punching him in the face. Lloyd hasn't got his elemental shield, so Garmadon is just doing what he wants really. And Lloyd tries to defend himself for one moment, but Garmadon is not having it and pushes Lloyd out. And Garmadon is just simply walking towards Lloyd growling. And Lloyd has a moment. He looks at Garmadon and he wants to try and reach out one more time, but this is the moment where he realizes that there's truly nothing left. He realizes that it's not his father in any capacity, which is just extremely sad by all accounts. This honestly feels like the moment that Lloyd accepted that not only was his father truly gone, but also he honestly was starting to question his own life. He honestly thought maybe this was not the moment where he was going to be able to walk out. And Lloyd, in that moment, realizes that it is now or never. And in the last moments where he truly felt like he could have, he conjures his power. And you can see that this is the moment where Lloyd truly realized this was his last stand. Because again, going back to the glowing eyes, they light up one more time. Almost like Lloyd knew it was now or never. And whilst he does put up a decent fight for a few moments, of course he does get a few decent knocks in there, and he does actually get to use his elemental power a few times. The thing is that again, it was simply just not enough. Garmadon was too strong, he was too fierce, and you can see Lloyd was struggling the entire time. However, if you look closely at Garmadon, he is again just stoic. He is not feeling anything in this moment. He's not feeling tired, he's not feeling stressed, he's not feeling anything. He knows that he's won the fight. It's just simply a case of how much longer Lloyd was going to go on for. But this leads to the last few moments of the fight, and I do think they are, of course, the most important ones. Lloyd, again, is using what he's got left to try and avoid Garmadon's attacks. Of course, the throw in rocks was one thing, but as soon as Garmadon got up close and picked him up, Lloyd gave up. And one more time, out of pure fear by all accounts, he did try and reason with the good side of Garmadon. He thought maybe for one more second that he was potentially there, and it turns into one of the most harrowing lines we have ever heard in Ninjago, which is when Garmadon responds, "I have no son." And Lloyd's reaction said absolutely everything. Lloyd knew that he was defeated, Lloyd knew that he stood no chance, and Lloyd knew he was in there just trying to get out alive. But the thing is that in that very moment, he gave up. And that is honestly kind of why he lost his elemental power to begin with. As Garmadon grew stronger and Lloyd's faith was gone, he realized that he truly had nothing left. And Garmadon froze him through the entirety of Cryptarian Prison. Lloyd's last little bit of elemental power protects him from it, but the thing is that he lands outside in that desert. And in my opinion, Lloyd thought this was going to be where he met his demise. Because as he tries to crawl away, he can't, and all he does is pull out the picture of him and his father, and that's all he says. He just says the word father, and he lets go of the image as it blows away in the wind. In my opinion, Lloyd thought that that was it. Lloyd thought he was not getting back up in that moment, and that honestly is very depressing to actually see. Of course, we knew this wasn't the end of Lloyd, and I reckon Harumi also knew that as well, because she does remark to let Lloyd live. She wanted Lloyd to actually see what they were going to do to Ninjago City. But that's the thing, that was Harumi's perspective, and in my opinion, I do think Garmadon would have jumped out of there and finished it off himself. But the thing is that I genuinely do reckon Lloyd was more than prepared to lay there and meet his own demise. And that is why this is one of the most darkest, one of the most emotionally dense, and one of the most depressing fight scenes in all of Ninjago. But that's also why it's the best. Because when you truly take a step back and you take a look at this fight scene from the analytical perspective, you see the story of a father and a son, but also the completely severed relationship between the two of them. You see Lloyd go through the states of disbelief, of anger, of denial, and also of paranoia, but then you see him go through the wave of depression, of realization, and also of complete dread of what was truly in front of him. And you realize that Lloyd, by all accounts, was completely spent emotionally, and also in the sense of his elemental power. And the thing is that you have the contrast. You have a version of Garmadon that was aggressive, that was angry, that was honestly feral in a lot of different ways. He completely disowns his son for the sake of gaining his own elemental power, in the sense of gaining his own ability to control Ninjago and leave it in his own name. You see, truly the darkest Garmadon has ever been, because this was the Garmadon that simply did not have morals. But that is why this is contender for Ninjago's most emotional fight, one of Ninjago's best fights, and honestly, one of the best scenes in Ninjago in its absolute entirety, because every single second and every single frame was not wasted. The more you look at it, the more you realize the details, and the more you realize the themes that I have said about, like Lloyd's elemental shielding, or Lloyd's eyes, or Garmadon's power, or Lloyd's genuine struggle throughout the fight. There is so much that you can identify, and so much you can realize, and so much that is said without any sort of dialogue, and honestly I find that absolutely amazing, and it does go to show that season 8 was absolutely fantastic in its storytelling. But on an overall, from every single perspective imaginable, this is one of Ninjago's best fight scenes. This has absolutely everything you want, and it serves so much emotional weight, and I do think it has an effect on Lloyd throughout the course of many seasons, and not just the Oni trilogy. I mean, it completely reflects in Lloyd's attitude towards Garmadon, of course within Crystallized, and honestly, it just makes me more and more fascinated to see where they will go with their dynamic from here. Maybe one day Garmadon will return in Dragon's Rising, and we can actually see the consequences even further of a scene such as this one. But this is where I want to officially pass it off to you guys. What do you think of Lloyd vs Garmadon in Season 8? Is it your favourite fight scene or is it not? Are there any details that I have picked up on that you simply never notice when you watch the fight scene yourself? Or is there anything that I've also missed? I would love to know if there's more to this fight scene than I've already picked up on, because as it stands, I truly feel like this fight has absolutely everything going for it. But if I've somehow missed more of the amazing details that I've already spotted, I would love to hear it from you. But thank you very much for watching this video, and I do hope you enjoyed, and if you did, please consider subscribing. I love talking about Ninjago with more people, and if there are any more fight scenes that you would like to see me analyze, please let me know in the comments section down below. But if you do want to support this channel any further, which you do not have to, you could always consider becoming a channel member. I absolutely am eternally grateful for all of the legends you see on screen, and a particular shout out to the eternal legend, Grandmaster Sensei 28208, for being an eternal legend. Thank you very much, my friend. But that is about it for today, you guys, and thank you very much for watching. Take care. Okay,